Well, I didn't see it.
threatening to.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Contemporary Issues class.
Oh, yeah.
We are going to have a good discussion presentation today about Economics 101, how it applies to today's political environment. Excuse me. By Ron Puning. So Ron, thank you for thinking of this issue and a short lesson on basic economics and how politicians use economics to their own ends. Both sides do that, obviously. Both parties do it. But before we start, our usual announcements. Zoomers, nice to have you here. Please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen when you're not speaking, and we are recording this for future playback. And there is a new class starting tonight about Lent. Rev Jerry has a class that's at 6:30 on Sunday nights, speaking about Lent, preparation for Easter, that Vicki and I are joining, and so I want to encourage you to do that if you're interested.
When's that?
And tonight at 6:30, sign up on the St. Andrew website. Pardon me? On Thursday afternoon in person here also. And I want to give a quick plug to next Sunday is our speaker is going to be a young man that I met in church here who was a fighter pilot in Afghanistan. And he said when he dropped bombs from his plane, he would pray, "Christ have mercy on those below." And I said to him, "Would you come speak to a small class that I lead about this issue of how soldiers reconcile their faith with their duty?" And he said, "Sure, I would be glad to." So that's going to be next Sunday. It should be very interesting, Carol. Yes, I think so too. And this young man is a graduate of Fuller Seminary too, so he's very articulate and educated on both these topics, religion and soldier. Okay, with that, Ron, thank you for presenting this. And do we get graduate credit for a class today in economics?
That's a good idea. This is really a very difficult subject to do in a way because it is so broad and so encompassing. We could very easily do a whole semester of 4-hour classes on economics. Economics, of course, impacts just about every aspect of our lives. It has a dominant influence on our country, on our households, on our politics. It's just a subject. Money is the root of all evil. It won't buy you happiness, but it buys most of the things it will.
The love of money is the. You forgot the first one.
Yeah.
The love of money is the real.
Right.
That's funny.
So, so it's a toughie. So we're just going to be like a stone skipping across the surface of a pond. We're just going to touch on a few high points, and we could very easily get diverted today into just any sub-alley we want relative to economics. So we're just going to hit some highlights, offend a few people, and we're not trying to. When you start hitting people's pocketbooks, they do react. So a couple resources. If there's a single book for the general public out there, it's this one here, Basic Economics by Tom Sowell. He deliberately tried to get rid of all the graphs and charts.
Really?
Although I think that helps, but he tried to bring it down to a level where everyday people can understand it and think it through. So there's a pretty good book.
600 pages.
We've had Chris Stifler of the Colorado Fiscal Institute speak. They put out a book every year. They call it a Purple Book, and you can get it for a donation of $20, but I'll pass that around. And it is an incredibly good, compact resource showing particularly focusing on Colorado. Where do we get our money? Where does it come from? How do we spend it? What are the trends? What are the difficulty areas? I must also say for difficulties, our legislature now is going to go through hell trying to balance the budget. they've got to make $1 billion in cuts. And largely because of three key reasons. Number one, Tabor. Tabor, of course, allows growth in the budget, but only according to a certain kind of inflation and population growth. And any legislature will tell you a lot of the government expenditure areas are not tied very well to general inflation. They have very specific inflation factors that affect them. And then there's demographics. You know darn well that Medicaid expenses are going to go up as the average population of Colorado climbs, and it is. So you add 5-6 years to the median population of Colorado, guess what? Medicaid goes up. It can't help but go up. So our legislature now is facing, you know, a really tough time because they're going to have to cut some stuff that nobody morally even wants to cut. I mean, what do you do? If you've got child social services where you get a call from a family that's abusing 3 kids and say, well, yeah, we can't fit it in. We'll call us next year when the budget's a little more open and we'll see what we can do. So it's going to be rough. Also, the federal government is pulling out a lot of undergirding funds for things like Medicaid and other programs, and the state budget's going to almost have to make those up. So some of the savings that Elon and company are doing are not really, they're saving it off the federal budget, but they're tossing it right back into the lap of the states. So it's not really a cut. It's just it's a spreadsheet maneuver. So we got to. What's that?
It's shifting around.
Shifting it, yeah, yeah. So that's okay. How many recognize the scene from the movie up in that upper left-hand corner?
Old Man Potter.
That's old man Potter. He's trying to con Jimmy Stewart into joining him. Remember that scene? He said, I can pay you money like you've never had before. And then, of course, there's a great book coming out on Mark Twain in about a month. I've already pre-ordered it. Mark says, the trouble with the world is that not that people know too little, it's that they know so many things that just aren't true.
Yeah.
We've got so many people carrying around what they think are facts when they're out in left field. Yeah.
Back then.
Okay, next slide.
Prophet he was.
Okay. Mary Trump has written several books on her uncle. And she said she thinks one thing we're seeing right now in this country is we're getting more of an emphasis on championing people who make big bucks. You know, you're the next Musk. You're the next founder of a new chain restaurant. You're the founder of Amazon. You're the bold person that's going to make big bucks. And that is what a lot of what America's looking for. Yeah, we champion people who are economic giants, powerhouses, people that can buy country clubs and a Rolls Royce every morning if they want. And she said there's not enough of the other part of life, which is caring for the poor, the sick, and the common man. She calls it individualism versus collectivism. And we've talked about that as a societal feature. So many have said that have gone to other countries, particularly in the Far East, Japan or China, they tend to have a culture that's much more collectivism. In other words, help the group, work for the group. I know when the Japanese had mask requests put on them, everybody said, it's for the good of the group, by golly, we're gonna do it. And they all collected together. Whereas we rough, tough, individualistic Americans said, yeah, it's not, if it doesn't meet my needs, the heck with the beehive philosophy. It's me, mine, and not yours. So, okay. Economic fantasy land. I love to watch The Wizard of Oz because it's got a lot of symbolisms of life as it is. Many of economic expectations of government that are impossible to deliver. Some wholeheartedly embrace political fantasies or talked out of real solutions. Remember, who was the guy putting the charts up in the presidential election from a couple decades ago? Yeah. To Ross's credit, he started pulling out charts and data and working from facts. Ross was not known for delivering baloney. He said, here's the numbers, here's the charts, here's where we're going. Some people grasp hold of that, but a lot of people didn't like it. They don't want to hear reality. They want to hear fantasies and to be told what they want to hear. Next slide. A cartoon. This may offend a few, but it fits my feeling on what they did with USAID just a few weeks ago. There's a little kid holding out his bowl. I haven't gotten any food from the US lately. That's because I shut down the USAID department to save money. But I reserved if I can read it, brand new department in the White House called the Faith Office. And I've named multi-millionaire televangelist Paula White to run it. But I'm hungry. And she answers, I'll pray for you. So here's a solid example of economics in action. So, and next one, 5. Idealistic, unrealistic daydreaming. No one has figured out a perfect economic model for heaven on earth. There's capitalism, socialism, communism, communes, etc. And they all have their strengths and weaknesses. One thing I like to say is we need bridled capitalism. Of course, the big question is, how tight of a bridle? Okay, and that's maybe where a lot of the argument is. Who knows the speaker? Okay, from the movie A Few Good Men. I don't know who saw that, but where he's getting interrogated and said, "You can't handle the truth." And the fact is, many people in politics have said, not telling the voters what they want to hear in economics could cost you the election. In other words, people want to be told, I can bring down the price of eggs. I can cut it in half in one day. Reality, no, you can't deliver that promise. But people don't want to be told that. They want to have their conscience sued, whatever, and they don't want to hear the truth. And the politicians often have to say things that they know they darn well can't deliver. I can balance the budget in 30 days. I can, solve this problem instantly. Just can't happen. Next one. Another problem we're having with people, we all have personal perceptions of the economy. And often the perceptions are based on factors such as how are you doing relative to your neighbors? A lot of how people are doing is, and how they perceive it, is how they look at their neighborhood and the friends and the people that they associate with and ask themselves, am I keeping up with the Joneses? And if they see the guy next door has a new BMW and a Rolls Royce, they say, nah, my lousy Chevy isn't cutting it. Okay. And in a way, the people sometimes expect the economy to deliver happiness, friendships, longevity, falsely believing material wealth is the key factor. I'll be happy, we'd be a happy country if we just had so much more money. Well, that would help, but America often needs to work on other things a lot more than money. And of course, I think the sermons we hear every day tell us that we need friendships. I was chatting with my sister the other day, and I said, if tomorrow morning when we wake up and we find that our life savings have been quadrupled, I said, would you be 4 times as happy? I said, I wouldn't.
2 times.
Yeah. Good point. All righty. So there's a short list of things money can't buy: manners, morals, respect, character, common sense. Here's the question: would you, if you could gain more fame and adoration, but you had to con people out of their money, would you do it? Hopefully not, but there's a lot of people that will. Yeah, there's a lot of people that will.
Oh, yeah.
And so you start looking at your true wealth, and you start saying your friends, your family, your physical environment, your spiritual state, and your health play big factors. And often to be happier, a lot of people need to recognize, you too, that it's not money you need to be happier and better. It's a lot of these other things. Next chart. How many have heard of Maslow's hierarchy pyramid?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, just about everybody that's taken the psychology. And of course, at the very top of the pyramid is self-actualization. And getting there creates a good bit of happiness in most people. How many saw the movie Can't Buy Me Love with Patrick Dempsey? Okay. In fact, the gal that starred in that ended up at the University of Northern Colorado. My daughter ran into her on campus. Next slide. Some things we're fighting right now in this country is the birth rate immigration issue. And to just maintain your population, you need a birth rate of 2.2 per woman, okay? And you can see we fell below that number just a little bit after 1970. We've never come close to getting back to it. And the latest number is that we're at 1.78 for 2025, these first few months. And so we're that's about 18, 19% short birth rate of what we need to maintain the population of the United States. You say, well, there's nothing wrong with our country losing population. And there's some truth to that. But if we're to just maintain our population with this low birth rate, we need to bring in about 18% more than births through immigration. So that's.
Europe is worse.
It's what?
They don't have any children in Europe.
Europe is worse
Okay,
with
yeah.
less children.
Yeah, a lot of the Western democracies are facing that. Even China is now seeing a big drop.
They used to be
And
worse.
Putin doesn't have enough soldiers. He's putting rewards for moms who can have 4 or more children.
Which all impacts the economy.
Right, right. Okay. Next one, birth rate plummet, a major cause. In your handout, there's an article, Why Men Can't Find a Spouse. This is economics. And it basically says a lot of young men, high percentage of them, have low incomes and very dim future prospects.
Yeah.
Without a business connection, without
It's page 3 on this one.
inherited land or whatever, they're facing dim prospects. And the gals are saying, yeah, why should I marry you? You can't contribute anything. I do. Who needs you, you know? So.
If you cook, I can work.
Okay, and there's also an article that talks about how this is not just a United States issue. There's an article here on Canada, the struggles they're facing. Their young men too are also seeing that some of the classic things from the 1950s just aren't playing out anymore. Okay. One of the facts, or back one, the first bullet. Many young men are falling behind economically. Earnings of non-college educated men at age 45 have dropped by 25% over the last 15 years. So the guys are having trouble being the breadwinners. The gals are coming in, working, most couples now, both work. And the old days of the guy working at the factory and making enough to raise a family of five, they're gone with the wind. All right. Let's jump to the next ones. Some nearly inviolate laws of economics. Rising wages and higher levels of employment contribute to inflation. So inflation's a little bit like a couple kids on a teeter-totter. And as you get wages up, who doesn't want to get wages up? And get employment level up, you want to do that. But that also does contribute to inflation. Also lowering interest rates.
Say that that's kind of an economic myth rather than an inviolable law. There's only been one empirical study of that by a professor from Princeton,
Ah,
a guy named Paul Kruger, and he found that actually raising the minimum wage increased economic activity when New Jersey increased their wages, and he studied that empirically. Because what happened was you had more people with more money, spending more money with their wages. That made more customers, more economic activity, and there was the multiplier effect that just kind of went into effect there. So I mean, there certainly can be that ratio, but so much of economics theory is based on assumptions, you know, little curves. And most of those assumptions require it to be a kind of a closed system. But the economy is like an ecosystem, you know, with lots of interacting parts, and there's always these externalities that change the way.
okay. And I'm glad you mentioned that because we're going to drift into now, not only do we have to look at the overall economy, but we have to look at the different quintiles of incomes and wealth. How does it affect the different groups? We've got one handout, I don't know if it made it around, of a list of billionaires. Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Price is supply and demand controlled, and price controls almost always do more harm than good. A good chapter in this book. Huge federal deficits divert money that could be used for productive infrastructure and to help with interest payments. So we'll talk about this chart a little bit. We talk about how our high deficit every year is draining off money that we could use if we didn't have that deficit to fund other things, more tangible, useful things. Lack of, in the book Collapse by Jared Diamond and Why Societies Fail, some of his books, he points out that one of the things where a lot of countries have got stuck in a rut is there's no money available in some of these countries to invest in small businesses, small industries, new enterprises, and growth of new industry and stuff is choked off if there's not some money in good amount available. Another economic truth, significant government safety nets have been found necessary in every prosperous 21st century nation. You cannot find any pure capitalism democracy that is succeeding without having some safety nets.
Like
Social Security, Medicare, pensions, child welfare services, those kinds of things, unemployment insurance, okay? Also, critical resource depletion and environmental degradation can produce some short-term deficits, but studies have shown you tear up the environment, you destroy your forest, your rivers, your clean air, your clean water. You may be able to have a grand old party for a short period of time, but it's going to come back and bite you in the butt, as they say. In the long term, you're going to get burned, and you're going to get burned bad. Pretty good article in the Denver Post this morning about the environmental laws that are getting, the enforcement of environmental laws getting squashed and cut out.
Diamond talks about the effects in Iceland on environmental
Yeah.
degradation, losing their forests and losing their soil. And so it's a,
And all the
Nice.
others.
Next slide.
And plenty of ice.
Yeah,
Probably not even notice.
Yeah.
okay. So again, Diamond's books are pretty good. Diamond points out that some other things that'll really hurt a country are ignorance, lack of education and training, blind adherence to crippling cultural, political, or religious practices. There's some of the Islamic countries that have these laws that are just economy killers. That'll just kill a country. And of course, there's even in some extreme religious practices that will destroy your economy. And of course, lousy work ethics. You do need people that have ambition and energy, and you don't want a lot of slough-offs. Severe inequality threatens economic and social stability. And yeah, and then some people do need to move elsewhere to survive and thrive. Next slide. Go ahead.
Second bullet point.
Sure.
I have a neighbor that talks about, that we need to have so much social security so that the lower masses do not riot against the people that have money. And he talks to it actively that we have to have so much of welfare and we have to pay so much in welfare just to keep the masses so they won't riot.
Yeah, they call it pitchfork economics.
Yeah, and how much and when and where.
You know what it was? Thank you.
Yeah, if you look at Charles Dickens' story of London in the mid 1800s, there was extreme poverty. And frankly, in a lot of other European countries, the French Revolution was largely set off by large numbers of poor people who were just starving, quite frankly.
Let them eat cake.
Yeah,
that's in there.
Marie Antoinette's statement. Okay, we're going to talk about net worth and income, and those are two different things. Your net worth is how much money you've got. If you've got $7 million in a bank account and a $2 million house and a Rolls Royce, you've got a huge amount of net worth, but you may not be working. You may not need to with that kind of money. So there's net worth and then there's income. As we look at in the United States, net worth by race, and this is over time, that scale goes from what, 1989 to 2012. It's not super late data, but it does, is it 2020? 2020, okay, it's not too far out of date then. But you can see where the whites have way more net worth. The Asians and some of the others are coming up real strong, but you can definitely see where the Hispanic and Black communities have far, far less net worth. And what this means, it means a lot of things, but a lot of us, at least some of us, have the advantage of having gotten some seed corn and money from our parents or grandparents. I know people that have inherited large amounts of land, businesses, etc. And that's found far more commonly among whites than it is among blacks. Very few black families have had the benefit of, I'll call it, given seed corn, generational income coming down. Next one. Studies have also shown income and wealth are more powerful than talent. Children from affluent families who have below average achievement scores, I mean significantly below achievement scores sometimes, still have a 70% chance of reaching the top quartile of income and education. I didn't say net worth, I said income. So if you're from a family that's got lots of bucks, you've got to, even if your kids don't do that well in school, or are struggling or are not the brightest candles, they still have a 70% chance of reaching that top bracket. It's an advantage. Whereas children from low-income families with significantly above average test scores only have a 30% chance of reaching that top quartile. So the conclusion you make is it's better to be born rich than smart. Sad but true. Next one. Okay, we talked about net worth. This is now net income. This is by year going up to just 2017, so it's not the latest data. But you can see the Asian Americans have done exceptionally well getting good incomes. And then the whites come in below them. Hispanics dropped down quite a ways, and then black communities fall well down there on the income. So there's a tremendous strata in income, as well as net worth. And that's one of the struggles we face as a country, is trying to give everyone opportunity and move ahead. But we got to realize we're not homogenous in terms of incomes and net worth. Next one. Here we're going to jump up to the federal level. And this chart shows the money coming in on the left, the cream color, and the money going out, the red, on the right side. And you can see there's more going out than there is coming in. In fact, to the tune of the delta is 1.83 trillion. And it's a significant fraction. I think right now national debt's up to 35 trillion, 36 trillion, whereas our expenditure is just under 7 trillion. So we have a debt 5 times our GNP, yeah. And just about every economist says that's too high. And it's one of the reasons we're paying such a big block of our funds for net interest. If you look at your chart here, net interest 882 billion. But look at on the scale what a big chunk of change that is going out. So politicians on both sides of the aisle have said that we need to attack that 35 trillion deficit and get that interest payment stopped from growing anymore. Go ahead.
Is lending us the money?
Some of it's to ourselves.
Is there a World Bank or?
China.
China?
So we borrow from, we owe different countries, there's not like one World Bank.
Great Britain,
Yeah.
China, Japan.
We're considered one of the safest places you can possibly put your money. There's a lot of wealthy people in China, Japan,
Great Britain.
Great Britain, France, and say,
Yep.
we're going to put our money in US Treasury bills. US T-bills are
But they're,
about as safe as
they're
you can
putting
get.
it in that, but they're not loaning us the money, this says we
That is
owe, interest. So who are we owing the interest to?
People that buy those trade.
To them, yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
Probably most of our portfolios have T-bills in them. I know my retirement portfolio has T-bills. They're not the highest interest paying things. They're considered very steady. They're not gonna.
They are backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government.
Yeah. Right.
That's so pretty. If we want to pay that down, do we pay the countries or do we, how do we pay that down?
We start buying back those T-bills and not issuing
Anymore?
as many. You wouldn't knock it to zero, no way. But start retiring them faster than you're issuing them to bring down that debt. Go
So,
ahead.
am I reading this correctly, that we're bringing in 1.7 million on social insurance and retirement? And that's greater than the actual outgoing social security?
You'll be considering.
Social insurance and retirement. I'd have to look into exactly what fits into that. The answer is yes.
So does that mean social security is fully funded? I think I must be wrong.
No, it is for now.
Well, for now versus the future. Yeah, as that number will the social security outlay is gonna go up and up and up, and the income's gonna drop.
Because of the birth rate?
That's a big, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's gotta fund social security, Medicare, Medicaid, all of those programs out of that 1.7.
I just looked up 2023. Japan owns the largest part, 1.1 trillion. China's number 2, 0.8 trillion, and United Kingdom 0.7 trillion. Other countries, 5.3 trillion.
The US dollar is considered the world reserve currency. You know, that's all trade of money through the World Bank, through the economies internationally, usually pegged to the US dollar. And that comes through from things dating back to the Bretton Woods Accord after World War II.
Oh, yeah.
And the establishment of the IMF and a bunch of things that have made us prosperous. And it's been true of other countries like Holland used to be, or the Dutch used to be a world currency. The pound sterling was a reserve currency. And now we enjoy that benefit for now.
Okay. All right, there's practically World War III going on right now in terms of where to make cuts on the right side of the ledger there. And but one thing that some people don't want to talk about. There's two ways to get that deficit reduced. One way is to cut expenditures. Another way, though, is to bring in more income. And they have actually found in the last 3 years, the Biden administration put more kick in the IRS. Not new rules, not higher tax rates, but simply stronger enforcement of existing rules. They estimate, I've heard we could get 20% more income from taxes if everybody, particularly the real rich, would pay all that they're legally required to do. But what are we doing? Now we're laying off a couple thousand IRS agents, many of whom's job was to go into the big companies and the big the super wealthy billionaire tax returns and look for illegal, fraudulent diversions. And that is now being slashed. So we could solve a big part of that deficit by just not new taxes, but just strictly enforcing the ones we already have.
I have an argument for a flat tax, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or sales tax, either one,
Uh-huh.
pick either one.
Go ahead.
If we remove the cap from social security, it would be solvent for,
That is true.
and Warren Buffett pays more in taxes than his secretary, less in taxes than his secretary.
People.
That's-
Yeah, and if you look at that chart that came out on the billionaires, I think, let's jump to the next chart here. How is wealth divided in the US? Again, we talked about how we're not an homogeneous society, racially or politically or economically. If we split the Americans, the households, into five sections, they call these the quintiles, 20% blocks, and look at the wealth. Look at how small the numbers are. The graph is trillions of wealth. And you can see if you take the lower 60%, you can put those together. And I don't think they do any more than equal the second highest bracket, which is the 20 to 40% highest group. So the lower 60% are way behind in terms of net wealth. And then we look at the top 20%. That includes all the people in the top 20%. And now we break out, if you take that top 20% bar and just break out the top 1%, look how big of a part are in that top 1%. In fact, the top 1% overpower, I think the sum of the lower 80%, if you look at those. Yeah. And so that's why we're having some struggles. No question about it. Next one down. Okay. Wealth inequality is especially high at the top of the income bracket. Yeah, we saw that in this last chart. Next chart, 18. The top 1% has 31% the wealth. And that tells you if you're going to raise more money from taxes, who can most afford to kick in.
But there's a lot of good points to that too, because it seems to me that the rich are the ones that benefit the most from things being the way they are. And, you know, if they don't want to change the way the things that they are, they should pay to keep the things the way they are. Seems fair, right?
It's fair.
There's
There's no such.
All right.
You know, a lot of economic policy has been kind of, I think, also misplaced too. You know, we've all heard the trickle down theory.
Yeah.
And we'll give all the money to the rich because they know how best to spend it. We'll give them all the breaks.
Create jobs.
And then something will trickle down through the economy. And it's pretty much really shown that that doesn't work. It doesn't really trickle down. It's just, that's what's been concentrating or contributing to it. You know, another economic theory is to kind of bubble up, we pay it down to the bottom and give benefits, and then it'll work its way up through the economy, and that does a little bit. But I've been kind of dialed into these guys that are advocating middle out, that you really prop up the middle class and do things that promote families, birth rates, intergenerational wealth, all of those things, and that goes both directions. You know, the rich don't get hurt from it, but the poor get lifted, and you have a solid middle class of people that aren't suffering. So I think we should advocate middle out.
Because the middle class really drives the economy, purchasing, they're the ones that buy everything.
Multiplier effect of that spending, it's
Yeah.
a huge benefit.
Price index.
Okay, this next chart, Donald Trump's latest proposed tax cut. This shows of the 5 quintiles, who would get how much of these proposed tax cuts. And
That's the classical trickle down.
please explain to me why you like this idea. That's what I want to know. Look who's getting all the money. You say, well, they pay all the taxes. Yeah, they pay. But yeah, this is not how we need to adjust our society, in my opinion. Okay, next one. Again, you've got the list of billionaires, and it's gotten worse, unfortunately. We created more billionaires, multi-billionaires. We're not talking about little
1 billion.
1 billion, 2 billionaires. Who's our top pop singer that just crossed? Yeah, I think she's coming close to 2 billion, but she's a piker. She can't begin to make this list in terms of money. And she's a very generous lady, by the way. Yeah.
I can't read the eye test. Would you
Yeah.
please read off like?
Okay.
Is this also the boycott?
I'll just pass one out to you. Elon Musk is top 244 billion. Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Ellison, Warren Buffett. They're all above. There's a surprising number. There's at least a dozen on this chart that are above 100 billion. That's a 1/10 of a trillion. Yeah, they're challenging the trillionaire status. So, yeah.
Ron, we've got 15 minutes.
Yeah,
left.
we better wrap it up here. We will throw this one out. Economics and politics. At the joint session, it was just about a week ago, Trump made the statement, we suffered the worst inflation in 48 years, even in the history of the country, and fighting every day to reverse the damage and make America affordable again. The facts are the tariffs and the massive deportation plans he has planned just about every economist said is gonna hit inflation harder than anything we ever saw. Then he made the statement about the prior administration. As you know, we inherited from the last administration an economic catastrophe and an inflation nightmare. But if you look at the numbers, wages and unemployment were excellent, GNP growth, very good. The full particulars of the response are in one of your handouts here, if you want to read them. So they were not true statements. Those were two very bold economic claims made in that address.
But egg prices went up.
Buy chicken.
Okay,
Butter.
okay, we'll finish with it. Here are some of the, for the average American, those are the key economic measures you need. You need quality, affordable health care. You need food and sustenance, clothing, housing, transportation. You need information like internet and information to make decisions. And then for your age dependent situation, you need either education on some level, childcare, senior living facilities, memory care, things like that. So if we had more time, we're going to step through those 7 categories and talk about what can or should government do to help you in those specific areas. What's the cost benefit of it? How do we do it? But we won't have to. That's all for another one. That's again trying to cover a subject. I remember one kid was joking about a college exam. Said, yeah, the final essay question was, explain the history of the world since 1200. And you've got 40 minutes to do it here. So good luck. And economics is a bit like that. So we just scratched the surface today. So let's toss it out there for some hot comments.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Excellent overview. I appreciated it. A sacred cow is defense and the military. People rarely talk about it, cuts that might be made there. My suggestion would be, I'm supportive of the military and the soldiers, absolutely, every one of them, including the veterans. We have over 400 bases of various types in the world that are military tied to the US in some fashion or another. Over 4, including the US and abroad, over 400 bases. I suggest we cut 300 of those bases. Now, what do you think about that idea to help with the economic picture?
Yes, you were right. You cannot solve the budget issue without looking at the military. Another example is, and Lord knows I love this country and I love our armed services, but we've got, I think, I've got to look at the exact number, 14 aircraft carriers. And every day I'm biting my nails more because aircraft carriers are becoming so vulnerable. They're great for fighting insurgents in some micro-Pacific island that doesn't have modern missiles. But it's only a matter of time where a couple of our carriers are going to get taken out in the Persian Gulf by swarms of drones and hypersonic missiles. And I think even our military guys say, yeah, we could easily cut our aircraft carrier force from 14 down to maybe 5 or 6. Yeah. Drone. Oh, yeah.
Why hasn't Trump and Musk really dug in yet to those kind of areas where the big savings are?
That's a good
Because
question.
every state has a stake in the defense budget.
Yeah.
Every one of the 50 states produces something that goes into the budget of the Defense Department.
Yeah.
Oh,
Carry industrial complex.
We have 11 carriers right now.
11?
Active carriers.
Okay.
Okay, so
So there's-
following on that statement, then, think about earmarking. So earmarking works 2 ways. One is I'm bringing money to my jurisdiction through revenue that's coming to the state or whatever that I'm doing. The other one, which is a real sleeper, specifically in the Defense Department, is you will buy this product from my state and it's embedded into the budget for the military, whether or not you need it or not. And the specific example that we have is Alabama produces Humvees. And the Army does not want the Humvees anymore. They're old technology, they're old. And literally, the only thing the US Army can do with them now is to use them for shuttling stuff around inside Peter's 300 Florida bases then that are around the world.
That's what,
So they're just basically just worthless things, but they are still obligated to purchase all of those things because to get the vote for all of them. So there is a lot of government waste, but they ain't gonna talk about that stuff.
Right.
And there's no way that they talk about it.
Everything's.
Yeah. And the attempt that may still prove successful to move Space Command headquarters
So that's gone.
from Springs to Mississippi.
SBA's gone.
Right.
Huntsville.
It's a tough time. I took a hit early this week. I went on Facebook and I said they were gonna take that song, "He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother" by the Hollies.
Yeah.
It was really the theme of Boys Town from the 1930s and 1940s. They used that as their dominant theme to raise funds for the Catholic charity Boys Town. But the Hollies did a song, "He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother." Encourage you to ask if you've got the music service on the internet to listen to that song. The road is long, and I said they're gonna change it from "He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother" to "He Ain't My Brother, and He's Too Heavy." And
Gets fired.
I angered some people on Facebook. Are you? Yeah, they came back at me, you bleeding heart liberal jerk, you're, spending money on, we got to cut, we know we need to cut off foreign aid and helping others and close hospitals and you bleeding hearts are taxing me to death. So, yeah. So,
When the real big money's in other things like defense
Right.
and
The VA.
VA, lots of places, but those are political sacred cows that they can't get into because of the support to the politicians.
Yeah.
Is that, sounds like that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
And it's easier to cut park rangers and IRS agents than it is to go in areas where politicians are gonna get hurt.
Department of Education.
Department of Education. Yeah. Mary,
So, we were in Costa Rica for 9 weeks last year, and we went to this language institute. And our professor there, he was very well educated. He was 40 years old. He spoke many different languages. He has master's degree. And he was saying exactly the same thing that this article had about men in America. He said he was 40, he wanted to settle down, get a family, and he said he couldn't get a girlfriend because as a teacher in the language school, he wasn't making much money. So he didn't have a car, he didn't have a house, and he said he couldn't get a girlfriend in the city because we were in a suburb of the capital. But his mother lived in a very rural area. So I said to him, well, can't you get a girlfriend there? And he said, no, because there, all they wanted was truck mechanics and like real, macho guys. And he was very well educated into history. And then he said to us, he said, that's why a lot of young Americans are voting for Trump. He said, because I see on the internet, they can't get girlfriends, whatever like that. But then the weird thing he said, and I guess I've heard this from many people. He said most Costa Ricans believe the Democratic Party in the United States are communist. Because when we expressed our views about politics, he said, well, you're communist. And we're like, no. And he said, that's what people in Costa Rica believe, that Democratic Party is communist. But he was like saying the exact same thing like American men are saying, and honestly, I was thinking, maybe it's not that you don't have a house or a car, maybe it's your mindset towards these women, because he said, well, all the women in the city are women's livers and this and that. And I'm like, I think that could be a bigger reason why you're not getting a girlfriend than you don't have a house.
Yeah, Woody Allen, the comedian from many years ago, said, well, to me, getting wealthy and famous means I now get turned down for dates by a higher class of women.
We've got about 5 minutes left. I want to give our Zoomers a chance to weigh in, ask questions, give comment if they would like to, Susan or Linda. If not, okay. Ron, I've got a quick question. You turn on the news and you can see on CNN and Fox News, both have their own economists that give their opinions in different ways.
Yeah.
They disagree.
Yeah.
How does that happen if economics is a science of truth?
Soft side.
It's not really a time.
Is it a science
It's an
of,
interpretive, process where it's very subjective.
it's very subjective?
It's traditionally not been, very empirical.
Okay,
Like
And it's very
statistics, right?
theoretical, and, those theories have been entrenched from long time standing. And they're all based on assumptions, so it's kind of a closed system. Something, the most famous word you'll come out of an economist's mouth is assume all other things are equal.
okay.
They always say that.
A lot of assumptions,
Say anything.
not
else.
proven truths like science,
It's like
medicine.
the immutable thing about wages and, that's not true.
Okay,
Yeah, we've got better data on stuff like vaccination effectivity. With some really solid data, or how to put a spacecraft in a certain orbit,
They call it the dismal science.
right?
the dismal science. Okay.
My father was an engineer and he used to say, figures don't lie, but liars can figure.
Well, I always wonder if some of the economists are lying about what's really the proven economic truth, if they're just twisting an economic theory to their own ends.
And it perpetuates, I think, the way things are, like, oh, God forbid that we raise minimum wages because that's just gonna crater the economy. And so that's just sort of built in there, and then people think that it is an immutable law. And, most of, I think, of the economic dialogue goes on to promote, wealth, and like just talking about definitions and maybe economic literacy. We talk about what free trade is, and we're all big free trade capitalists. But capitalism in this country isn't really spread along a diverse, capital is all very concentrated, as those other graphs showed. And, we just let those myths kind of perpetuate so that, and don't question it. Like free trade is, by definition of Adam Smith, is many buyers, many sellers, not Amazon and a million of us. And perfect information, which I'd rather say reasonable information. Both parties have equal information, and none of the parties can control the price or influence the price very reasonable. And that's not the case. None of us have any control or influence over prices, especially individually.
Yeah.
So free trade.
Just
doesn't
a couple-
really exist, I would say.
Thank you, Jeff. Just a couple more minutes left. Questions or comments? Carol?
Well, the taxation system. Because that's loaded with inequality, partisan politics, and so on. The way that things are taxed and not taxed.
Yeah. That'll never change, probably.
No, now with tax season, we're all aware that we're paying taxes. I don't mind paying taxes to, do my part to help with roads and everything, but the very wealthy, many of them are not paying any taxes at all. And even with the loopholes, they're just not paying, and yet they'll call other people parasites. And yet to me, they're the parasites. They're the ones that are using our roads and all the resources and not really paying their fair share. And Elon Musk, I understand, is a billionaire often because of our taxpayer dollars of so many subsidies he's gotten for Tesla and Starlink and everything. We have helped make him the billionaire that he is.
Yeah.
Right.
Second rocket crashed.
Yeah, New York Times report, he paid zero federal income tax for his companies legally took all the legal loopholes, zero federal income, paid other kinds of taxes, but zero federal income tax.
Yeah, the middle class always, pays the taxes and gets lower income. They don't have the write-offs. They don't have the opportunity that the very wealthy do. And to me, that they've created their own wealth because they've manipulated they vote certain people in who do the right thing for them.
Of course.
I think the marginal tax rate used to be for a long period of time, 70%.
70%
And
marginal tax rate.
when was it, in the seventies or so,
Yeah.
they just got cut and slapped down to what it is now.
Well, the ability to hide wealth, lodge it outside the country. The ability to hide wealth for wealthy people is much greater than it is in the middle class.
Welcome to the corporate states of America.
Corporate states of America.
Corporate states of America.
Yeah.
Thank you, Corrine.
Thanks, Ron.
Very good. All right. We're out of time.
Okay, something to offend everybody, but hopefully we don't learn something.
We all feel better. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Bye, Susan.